Hi there. Research has recently proved an uncomfortable truth. When things are going well, when business is booming, when all your sales activities are starting to pay off, the last thing you want to do is take your foot off the gas. It would be nice to think that once you've reached a position of dominance in your industry, or even just prominence, then you can start to reap the rewards. That's the time you can start to take money out of the business. There's an old saying attributed to Henry Ford, although I doubt if he really said this one, that a man who stops advertising to save money is like a man who stops the clock to save time. Research from the Ehrenberg Bass Institute, and the Ehrenberg Bass Institute is probably the premier organisation in the world at the moment for marketing research. Their research shows that stopping advertising is the worst possible thing any organisation can do. Now, they have data to back it up, but they start off using a simple analogy, and the analogy they use is an aircraft at cruising height. When an aircraft reaches cruising height, it doesn't switch off its engines. If it did that, it would crash. And it says exactly the same thing would happen to your sales if you stop advertising. Now, the problem with that analogy is that when an aircraft reaches cruising altitude, that's exactly what it does. It cruises, it knocks back its engines and just coasts along. In fact, if you're talking about a long-haul flight, and Ehrenberg Bass is all about long-term activities, then the aircraft spends far longer up there at cruising altitude than it does struggling to get up there. So, although the plane makes a simple analogy, perhaps there's a better one. How's this? If you cook a meal in good times when the pantry's full, you get a Sunday roast with all the trimmings. If you cook a meal when the pantry's bare, you get tin peas on toast. Think of your marketing and advertising as that meal. If your plan is to start upping your marketing and advertising when sales are already declining, you're too late. The best marketing and advertising happens when you have the budget to do it, when your pantry is full. Instead of relying on analogies, though, maybe you want to actually look at the data itself. And this is exactly what the Ehrenberg Bass folks have provided. Their research shows that a business's sales decline by 16% in the first year after it stops advertising, and they decline by 25% the following year. And that picture just keeps on getting worse and worse as time goes on. And that's the average position if you take all businesses into account. The situation is much worse for normal businesses, the non-enterprise, the non-multinational organisations among us. In this sector, you could be losing 25% of your sales in the first year after you stop advertising, and 50% in the year after that. This research contradicts the wisdom of one of the most common behaviours in business, that when times are tough, when budgets are being squeezed, cut advertising. To drive the point home further, Ehrenberg Bass analysed their data to see how things changed according to whether the business was growing, level, or already declining before it stopped advertising. And the data shows that if the business was already declining when it decided to cut advertising, it was basically slitting its own throat. That may save some money in the short term. I mean, it absolutely does, because any money you don't spend on advertising goes straight onto the bottom line. But sales will plummet, ultimately deriving the business of the revenue it needs to keep going. It is a suicide strategy. The only exceptions to this trend were big and medium-sized organisations that were growing anyway. These organisations could afford to take a short advertising holiday. The lesson from Ehrenberg Bass's data is keep the pedal to the metal even when times are good and business is booming. If you don't want to rely on analogies or data, then you can just fall back on good old-fashioned common sense. There are 6 reasons to push marketing and advertising harder when business is booming. Point 1. Good times do not last. The saddest thing we ever see on TV is a politician promising to end a boom-bust cycle. And we all know the only way a politician is going to do that is by eradicating the boom at the top. And the same is true of our businesses. We have good times, let's celebrate them, but don't assume they're going to last forever. Point 2. When orders do slow up, it's too late to start your marketing and advertising then. And if you don't think your orders are going to slow up, I'd refer you to point 1. Point 3. The good times are when you should take action to strengthen your brand, because it is your brand that will support long-term profit. More on that in a minute. Point 4. You've got the budget to do good marketing and effective advertising when your business is booming. Do you want that Sunday roast with all the trimmings? Or do you want tinned peas on toast? Point 5. You advertise to defend a position as much as, if not, to gain a position. Using Ehrenberg Bass's analogy, it's much easier to keep that plane cruising at 34,000 feet than it is to get it up to 34,000 feet in the first place. Marketing and advertising is all about keeping you up there. It's all about trying to keep business booming. Consider this as well. Amazon was the biggest ad spender in 2020 in the world. And this is despite Jeff Bezos once saying that advertising was the price you pay for having an unremarkable product or service. He changed his mind in 2018. And point 6, you're not panicking. When business is booming, you have time to do things right, to do the research that will make your advertising better, as well as having the budget to do it well. There's one final point to make as well, and I don't really make it point 7 because it's a bit of an uncomfortable one. When your business is booming, that's the time you want to hammer home your advantage. If you're selling more, it probably means one of your competitors is selling less. There's an old saying about being fair and not hitting someone when they're down. Well, this is business. This isn't necessarily about being fair. So yes, hit someone when they're down. If you're doing well, it's time to hammer home your advantage. I won't do a Godfather impression, but remember, it's business, not personal. So what are the 4 key marketing activities you should be looking at when business is booming and things are really good? Well, number 1, as I said earlier, is brand building. Good times are the perfect times to double down on your brand building activities. As research has shown time and time again, brand building has a strong positive effect on long-term profitability. And there'll be a little link at the top of the screen that will take you to pages to back that up. The main reason businesses shy away from brand building is it has a relatively weak effect on short-term sales. But that doesn't matter to you at the moment because business is booming. You've already got those short-term sales. With brand building, you can make sure you get jam tomorrow and you already know you're getting jam today. If you want a quick summary of why brand building matters, let me point out this scenario to you. Think about the car you drive. Instead of that, I'm going to offer you the Baxter wagon. It's absolutely, in every respect, just as good as the car you're driving, but it's 25% cheaper. Will you buy it? The hell you will. Of course you won't. Because you don't have a clue whether Baxter wagons are any good. And there are already lots and lots of cars on the market that are 25% cheaper than the one you've bought. You don't know Baxter wagons. You have no idea about them. I have no brand identity as a car manufacturer. So, if you already know what your brand attributes are, what customers associate with you, then you can move straight on to the brand promotion phase. And if you're willing to commit to a long-term campaign, you'll find that your media buying rates are about half what they would be if you were only talking about a short-term advertising campaign. And that applies to TV, local print media, or all the digital platforms in between. It's a wonderful position to be in. Just remember to abide by the golden rules of brand promotion. Keep it simple, keep it consistent, and keep it non-technical. Run it for years and aim for a long-term emotional connection between you and your potential customers. If you don't yet know what your brand attributes are, then now is the perfect time to do your brand attributes survey. Find out what they are. Are you seen as responsive or slow? Are you seen as expert or not? Are you known as being cheap or expensive? Approachable or aloof? Important in your market or insignificant? A brand attribute survey is a win-win situation for any business. Any positive attributes it reveals are great for promotional value. You can start publicising them straight away. Any negative attributes tell you what you need to fix. And while you're out there talking to customers to find out what your brand attributes are, you can also find out and gather lots of other important intelligence, like how do their buying processes work. The second great thing to do while business is booming is to research an entirely new market. Because business is great in the market you operate in at the moment, or markets, but what happens when that changes? Most business crises come from things that are completely out of our control. Think about COVID or Brexit or anyone who supplies to the oil and gas industry. When business is booming in your existing markets, start researching the next one. The third thing to concentrate on in good times is your case study portfolio, or think of it as a case study matrix. There will be a link again at the top of the screen of this video taking you to our page on how a case study matrix works. But in short, a case study matrix should ensure that you have a case study that you can give to prospective customers for whatever product or service you want to sell, promoting whatever attribute you want to promote in whatever market you happen to be operating. And if you think about it, if business is good at the moment, your customers, your existing customers, will never be better inclined to help you with a case study than right now. And finally, the fourth point of things to look at when business is booming: improve your sales and marketing integration. Your resources are probably stretched incredibly thin at the moment because you've got so much business on. Automating a lot of your tasks takes the stress out of that. It gives your staff some of their time back. Now is the time to improve your marketing automation systems and your CRM systems and the integration between all of them. So what are your next steps? Well, if you want to take the DIY route, all of those 4 things that you need to do when business is booming, you can do all of those yourselves. Some of them better than others, it has to be said. If you're doing customer research, for example, that's better done by an outside agency, because if you're asking people what they think of you, it's very difficult to get an honest answer and a completely open answer when you're sitting there right in front of them. It's better to get a third party. But for all the other activities, you can download our little black books off our website and they'll tell you everything you need to know. And they're free. Alternatively, you can use an outside agency, and by doing that, you make sure that things are done accurately, efficiently, and on time. Everyday business doesn't get in the way and divert your project. So if you don't have the people, the time, or the resources to do this, give us a call. That's what we're here for. We're surprisingly friendly.